concerning our, build, operate, transfer situation. So, huh? Okay, who call up? Yes, sir, I'm ready for you.
Good afternoon.
Nice to have you here.
Glad to be here. So, I think today, what we'd like to talk about is kind of where we are with the jail project, specifically around costs that we're estimating right now. And I'd like to kind of go through what we've been doing over the last month or so. Our team has been had received the construction documents from Greg at Elevadis and his team. We put bid packages together and put that out on the street. And early last week, we received bids from a large group of contractors. We have some copies of those bids here if we need to reference any, but I don't think we'll get to that level of detail today. I think we sent this and spoke to over just that 80 different subcontractors. And we got some really good participation on a lot of packages. There were a few prime packages that didn't get as much as we would have liked, but we're still trying to maybe get some other bids on just to see where we're at. We fought some past bidding. The fact that this particular project has had a couple different pricing renditions over the years. Subcontractors look at that differently. So we had a handful of bidders that chose not to bid it. Maybe they weren't as competitive the first time around, or they're too busy now. Needless to say, they talked to us, but ultimately passed. But all that being said, we do feel we have good, strong current numbers from the market. And should we move forward with where we are today or here in the near future, we do have a good team of contractors that are participating. I feel confident in who those bidders are. A couple things to note. The market that we're in right now, and we've been in for the last 24 months or so, is just different from any time in the history of construction. Typically, year over year, you're seeing price increases, escalation that we call them, somewhere around 3%. The last 2 years, it's been difficult to calculate what that is because various trades are
Channel 18's here.
a lot different than others, but we've seen it anywhere from 10 to 20%. And I say that from the perspective of, I know there was conversation before we were on board about budgets and trying to work this design to a number and thinking that we're there, but unfortunately I think the numbers have come in higher than we would have anticipated them. But given where we are in the marketplace and also in other jails that we've seen being bid here recently around the state, we're not too far off from what the market says, but that's kind of where we're at. So I'm going to pass out
Don't pass out.
I'm not going to pass out. I'm breathing and standing here just fine. No nerves here. I will hand out. How about that, Scott? A summary that I had sent the commissioners on Friday, and I think that we might be able to throw it up on the screen here. That's a different. I'll get to that. This is these are cost estimate summary. Yeah, so don't pass out, Scott. We want to. So, please note, this is preliminary, but we've tried to put our best foot forward with the bids that I said we got. Jay, who's here, if we have to get any specifics, is on our team, led this effort. Right now, just to rip the Band-Aid off, we're projecting the cost of the jail as currently designed, total construction being just under $26 million. Now, a part of that, and included in that, is, about 350, 460, about almost $1 million in contingencies and allowances. If you remember back to what we agreed to during our interview process for the DOT, was that contingency money is ultimately the county's money. Should it not be used at the end of the project, that will be returned. Now, some of that will be we've always used to the projects, so stuff happens. And a chunk of that is in relation to soil stabilization. Per the geotechnical report, they anticipate us having to stabilize the building pad and some of the pavement areas out there on site. But running through this, the top section are bid packages that we received bids on, and what those total, and you can see the 80 bids there out to the right that bidders that we spoke to. The middle section is some contingencies as it relates to designs, the soils, a section for escalation and expediting. That covers things like it's not ever been a line item we've had to put in the budget for the last 2 years, but manufacturers will increase their price in the middle of a project sometimes, and we don't have a lot of legs to stand on there. But, or it may make sense to spend a little money to expedite some materials to get them to the site because of the lead times. But there's that, then there's the construction contingency, all those total up, and then you get into some general conditions and fees and insurance and bonding, the whole thing to get to the total. So, down at the bottom, a couple other things, alternates. We leave a line item for additional bonding. That's as we start to talk to subcontractors, does it make sense to provide additional insurance to the project if they may be on the borderline of a package that may be a little more expensive than they're used to handling, or would it help the project to have an additional bond on it to cover certain people? That's to be determined. Utility extension, we had sent some numbers. There were 3 bids on that work back last week for the RDC meeting. That additional money is there, and then we've started to put some potential cost savings. Now, our focus over the last week is since receiving bids has been going through those bids and scoping them to make sure everybody has what they're supposed to have. Not turning a focus to, hey, what ideas are out there where we could save money without negatively impacting the design of the jail. So we've identified a handful, a dozen of those items that we feel would be very easily achievable. I will caveat, we've not shared that list with partners at Elevatus to go through, and I'm sure there's a whole another dozen or 2 ideas that we could all come up with as we start to really roll up our sleeves to dive into this to figure out where we can sharpen our pencil. But that list alone is probably in the range of $300,000 to $500,000 worth of savings, maybe a little bit more. Not necessarily every one of those may be able to be done, but just to show you where we're at. So when you start to take out potential contingency savings and cost savings, as you can see, these numbers start to trickle down. So, where do we go from here? I think the main purpose of this meeting is to openly talk about these numbers and where we're at and where the county is from a budget perspective. We've sent over, that is what she has, is the draft BOT agreements that are really for the county to start reviewing. There's no specific numbers in this, but it's more to start reviewing legal language for when we do get to the point of entering into an agreement. That would be the baseline agreement. We put a scope exhibit in there, and we put the guaranteed maximum price in there, as well as a schedule. So those things are areas we would start to look at. But I think more importantly is understanding the financial side and what do we need to get to. I feel confident I can stand here and say this is probably more expensive than anybody wants to spend and or could spend, but we want to approach it strategically as a team. I'm confident we can work together to get this to a solution that is appropriate for the county and everyone involved, but depending on what number we need to get to may or may not impact how much of the design needs to be modified. So with that, I'll open it up to any questions anybody may have.
Is this, detention equipment, is that steel cell?
Yes.
And so that's your only bidder on that?
Yeah, so Pauley Jail is our detention equipment contractor. That package includes all detention equipment, so the steel cells would be a part of that, as well as all security electronics, so cameras, access control, locks, the plumbing fixtures, the security plumbing fixtures that are in cells, and that's a very large package, and it's very typical in this area of the Midwest to only have one bidder on that package, and that's Pauley Jail.
Did you seek other bidders?
We do seek other bidders, but it's extremely difficult for us to get another bid in that package. And I think I can show past jobs where they were the only bidder on it. You're not gonna find a better contractor to do that scope of work. I'm not just saying that because they're the only bidder, but I think Greg and Elevatus would speak to to that as well. Their numbers are pretty accurate. They're not, we don't ever worry about them fluffing up a number because they're the only bidder. They've been in business for over 100 years now, so they want to do the project.
So have you never heard of coastal jail or coastal detention or?
Coastal Detention, Cornerstone, there's a few others.
And they didn't want, did you ask them to bid on it? Because they've told me personally in the past on the phone that they would be interested in bidding that.
We sent it out, we put it on a public site as well,
I see.
so anybody could have had access to it. I can't speak to the, Jay, if you had a conversation with either of those, but, again, it's not uncommon in this area, in the state of Indiana and even surrounding states, to not get another one. The detention equipment vendors are limited on who's doing what, and it's they've kind of become territorial in where they do their work.
Helps get prices up, stick to territory.
Yeah.
Yeah, it helps.
So
I guess the elephant in the room for me is a year and a half, 2 years ago, when I think the design that was duplicated from Missouri, maybe, that Greg spoke of, he said 16 and a half, maybe 17 million. And now we're substantially above that, when, in my knowledge, things have stabilized a little bit. I mean, things were 2 years ago, a year and a half ago, things were much more in turmoil than they seem to be now, cost-wise. And we're, almost 10 million above that. What happened?
I can't speak to the design and the conversations that took place for this project, in that Fargo, and Greg can, I'm sure he'd be happy to come up and talk about it. We did receive, from Greg, and we ran an exercise internally with him, the final cost summary from the bids in Lawrence County, Missouri, which is based off of this, and I know there's been some tweaks to the design. And that final project was put together cost-wise, GMP phase in, I think, end of June of this year. And there are a few packages that are different. One of the things that we also have done internally is, using Turner Cost Index and RS Means. They both put out a cities index, so you can compare jobs from one city in the US to another and what the market is differing. Lawrence County has Joplin and Springfield, Missouri. And you compare those cities to Indianapolis and Lafayette here, which are the major cities closest for the index. Delphi, Indiana doesn't fit in that index, unfortunately. But there's a 9% difference, almost 9% difference. Increase for work in Indianapolis and Lafayette compared to Joplin and Springfield, Missouri. So you're fighting against that. So if you just said, hey, let's build that same jail here, theoretically, if it was bid at the same time, it would be about 8 to 9% difference, which that jail was in the $21–22 million range. That's $1.8 million difference increase. We're December instead of June. Yes, the market has cooled off from the perspective of how crazy it was over the last 16 months, but it's still, prices are still going up. One major package that we want to dive into, we had two numbers that are really close to each other, is the electrical. The $1 million difference, our bid today from what the project in Missouri was. And those two bidders they do work here a lot in the local area. It's Brand Electric and Houston Electric. So two good, reputable contractors that do this size of project, and it's $1 million difference. So we've started to compare our bid packages to theirs, so that between us and Elevatus, we can start to identify where there might be significant differences. That by far the most significant is electrical. But as it has cooled off, they're still increasing. Jay, if you know what percentage we're seeing from the Turner and RS Means between summer to current winter?
Yeah, believe it or not, per quarter is still about 2% this year, per quarter.
So 0.75% per month, with every month we've waited this year in general market. So when you're talking $20 million projects, that's big chunks of money. And some packages are far, that's the average. There's some that are exceeding that. Steel's starting to come back down a little bit. Electrical and those components are continually rising, let alone being able to get some of those components. There's some that have 9 to 12 month lead times on things.
So in general, the construction market is still extremely hot, is what you say. 2% per quarter rise in cost means it's really hot, right?
Yeah, there's still an excessive amount of work out there. There's still a lot of pent up demand. It's a good time to bid projects. I mean, other jobs that we're doing, we're getting good coverage and people want work, and but it's unfortunately prices are just elevated. So you're battling a lot of that, and you throw in the fact that interest rates are rising, and you're battling that as well, and so you've got high cost and cost of money's high. You would think it's not a great time to do it, but everybody's still willing. So
You stated some of the bids, that you spoke to seem to bow out. Do you think that's because it's already been bid a couple of 2 or 3 different times? They're like, yeah, they're probably not gonna do anything, why bother?
There's people that said exactly that. You know, they haven't done anything yet, what makes it different this time, and we can only sell it so much to say, hey, we've got a commissioners and council, we're wanting to get this done, the county needs to get it done, trust us, the fact we're gonna get this figured out. That only goes so far, and we probably did convince a few to bid because of that. But there's legitimately 4, 5, 6 bidders that bid it last time that just said, hey, we didn't get it. It wasn't that maybe you're not gonna do it, it was, we weren't competitive last time, what makes us think we're gonna be competitive this time if a little bidder than last time is still bidding this time. And I'm not privy to the bid tabs from the first couple times this was bid, 3 or 4 years ago, whatever it was, I don't even know the exact timeline, I just know. And we, you know, Pauley Jail, they bid it the first 2 times, and I know there was differences between each bid, from a design, and there's differences to this time. Their numbers are close to the first time they did it. I think they said the first time they did, they were around 4.6, and then somehow the second time, it may have been backwards, there was a drastic design change, and they were in like 2.5 million or something. There was a lot less components to that, detention wise, so. Again, I wasn't involved in those conversations 3 or 4 years ago, and so, you know, it was that.
So you're saying Pollard Jail is about same, that package has been the same for 4 years roughly?
It was at one point, then there was a drastic change, and I don't know, Greg, if you.
It was when the cells were cut, the number of cells were cut. Okay, as an alternate, so that's why they're moving it down.
Is that an option to, you know, build the pre-engineered steel building and then add more cells later? And have you done any work on that, like preliminary?
So that there are options to shell out some spaces, like that, or convert some cell areas to dorms. Dorms are typically cheaper. You see those to be about 15% cheaper than cells, on average. Those options are out there. We've not done anything with them. Our goal today was, you know, our main goal is hopefully we have a number that's where we need it to be, and we come in and everybody loves it, and we get that contract signed and we start moving. But we know there's a lot to work to be done, and we gotta roll up our sleeves. Those type of ideas, we don't wanna do those in a vacuum. We wanna get input from the 2 boards, Elevatus, the sheriff. We all need to sit around the table and figure out, okay, how do we get there? What can we live without? What do we absolutely need? What other ideas are out there? The ideas we put up here are low-hanging, easy fruit that we can go grab. But, you know, if it's, okay, we have to get down to 20 million or 21 million, there aren't a lot of renditions to get there within the footprint that we have. And, you know, you would start really hacking different things, and then I don't know if you get a jail you're satisfied with. So, again, we can do a lot. There's a lot of ideas out there. We just don't want to do those in a vacuum.
So the dorms versus cells saves approximately 15%.
Of that component. So I'm not saying, hey, we're at 25 million, you're gonna save $3.75 million. That's not that. It's
It's
what
just
those
a-
little components, and that's a small area of the building.
Yeah, your HVAC isn't gonna change, your electrical's not gonna change.
Correct. You're eliminating steel cells, but yet you still have to put a restroom in there, you get a mezzanine potentially. There's different components. We look at that a lot, in the jails that we do to kind of do those comparisons, but each jail's different. The size of the day room is impacted, or that impacts the cost. You know, a larger day room is gonna be maybe a bigger savings, but they're pretty small day rooms here that we're looking at.
But if you start eliminating cells and do just pods, then you take some of the control out of the inmates from the sheriff's department. I mean, they gotta be classified, that's something you have to think about too. You can't put in one max felon guy to a guy that just got in there for no WI. You're looking at a big lawsuit, and so, I mean, you have to have the certain cells and levels to handle the certain classifications.
Yeah, that'd only save at 15%, if it was on 5 million, it would only save $750,000.
Yep.
So,
And I wouldn't even say it's, you can do it on that much, to be honest, it's a minimal settings for this jail.
oh,
Cause currently not all of the beds are in cells, there are some dorms already in this.
then would the masonry cost go up if you did some more dorms versus steel cells? Probably.
Yeah, every line item is affected, when, you know, some plus, some minus. It would definitely have to be something we get some sketches from Greg's team and start to put components in it, but I think it's premature to say, hey, let's look at the bed arrangement, really until we, you know, what target are we shooting at? You know, when you start to put the financial aspect together, what's the down payment you're paying out of the funds that are available? What's your payment source? What's that relate to in a bond? And get that number that everybody's comfortable with, saying, hey, based on this, here's where we're gonna be. If we got to this number, we would move forward. Obviously, everybody wants it to be less, but what is the max that you would, you know, be happy with as a county and can afford? So that we can work as a team with sheriff and the architect and the committee to say, okay, let's start looking at those ideas and putting cost savings together and rank them and say, okay, if we cut another $1 million and we get aggressive on, you know, other things in here, does that get us there? I'm, you know, arbitrary throwing darts, but I think we need to know the target, because if you guys say it's 21 million, I think we're looking at a redesign of a lot of components. This is a bad analogy, but when you can value engineer a finger off of something, but we're looking at, you know, full limbs that we gotta cut off the tree, so if we gotta get that drastic. So that's a question we have. We've never heard a, hey, this is the exact number we would like to get to. But another thing we've faced too, we've had it here, some bidders fatigue in the market. So depending on what we're doing, how we have to bid that, it doesn't necessarily help the cause. But the benefit of the DOT is that we have fulfilled those public things, and we can sit with these contractors in a room and negotiate and really get the pencil sharpened where we need to, as opposed to having to rip open envelopes and hope. So there's a lot of pluses with the way that you're doing it now, that we can all roll up our sleeves and get there. It's just, where are we trying to get to? That would be my biggest question that I think would help us, would help Greg and his team to say, yeah, we can sit in there and figure it out.
so that's the next step, coming up with a magic number not to exceed 21 million.
Whatever the number is that you at the county think is the number between down payment and payment source and what that bond looks like to get to that total. And then that gives us a dartboard to define in on to shoot at and say, okay, we can get here with the current design and all of these great ideas, but if it's much more than that, we're at a whole different board of ideas.
When you say total redesign, now we're talking about what? A lot more money spent on design again, how much?
I'm not advocating that we need to totally redesign this.
Right.
That's not. I'm just saying, depending on the number, there's only so much you can do within a footprint. If we have to cut square footage out, we're probably looking at some kind of redesign. And I would assume there's fees involved in that to redesign it, but again, hoping we don't have to get there. Hoping we can start taking out small chunks of it and not eliminate something from the project that's totally necessary. Again, that's totally dependent on the number that you guys dictate to us.
On the asphalt stuff, you think our highway department will be able to do that asphalt? I think that would save us some money there.
Yeah, there's always those possibilities. We've done projects where we've had, county highways, paved parking lots and other things. We can look at that, we can break out the value of that, and so you would know how much would come off and what that would be. Sometimes we run into issues with that from a scheduling and coordination, because it never fails, the time we need asphalt out there, the street department is busier than all get out. But, as long as everybody has their eyes open to the situation and know that, you know, there may be some inconveniences there, we may need to do something temporary here or there, that's definitely an option. And we've done that on other places. We've had a fire station we built, they took all the landscaping out, and the firemen said, hey, we're gonna landscape our own building and save money. And there's still a cost to those things, but it's just different, you know, you can handle a lot of potentially different budgets or other things. And so we are 100% open to any idea, and we'll price anything from that perspective and give the breakouts. We're confident we can figure this out. We all need to work together.
That's my question.
Yes.
Line 31A, earthwork and utilities, is that the amount that was presented to the RDC?
No, so there's,
Will be their involvement?
no, there's two separate line items. The number that we presented to the RDC is below the bottom line, number 2 in the alternate summary, 1,188,000. So the earthwork and utilities, the 1.327 number is on site. It's all the on-site, water, sewer, earthwork, storm. The alternate number is off-site. We kept that out of the total.
Okay.
And I wish it was the other way.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah. So yeah, they're separate.
What, do you have any idea what the, you know, if we did say we'd come up with 21, would that be a square footage cut then from this plan? Certain number of cells cut, basically?
My gut says yes. That's a big number to cut out of this to get to 21 within the current square.
How many
footage.
cells would that cut?
I wish I was.
Me
that-
pinning you down here.
I wish I was that good at my job. I'm not.
But if we keep trying to go smaller and smaller, we're gonna be adding on to it in 10 years, if that.
I mean, it's something we have to talk about, though.
I know, we gotta talk
We
about it.
gotta bring it
but-
up, and then, I mean, I appreciate what you're saying, Steve, though, you're right.
Yeah,
But
I don't wanna be sitting here after we spend this money, if we can, then you gotta tell the public, oh, we built it too small, we gotta add on to the building and put another 20 cells and
yeah,
another $10 million.
I just didn't feel for it.
I may add something, I just wanted to make a comment about the pricing and kind of where we've seen the state of the industry in the last couple of years is, unfortunately, we've taken some steps on other projects too, where we've made a pause and we've said we're gonna cut some scope out, try to attempt to save some money, when actually the time that we've done that, we've actually increased the cost of it, because the marketplace changed that quickly, and so you've lost scope, but you're paying more for it. And so what I would caution us towards in this situation is a situation we don't wanna do is, cause you to lose scope and then have you pay more money. And, unfortunately, you know, we're seeing prices that are stabilizing on the material side, but I think it's the labor side that's really driving up right now, just due to the fact that there's so much demand that's built up and we're not seeing it slow down. So it's, you know, it's anyone's guess as to what it's gonna continue to do. And we pretty much know that we never really see prices go down, unfortunately. So where it is today is probably gonna be about as cheap as you're ever gonna see it for this construction. And if you're considering, you know, building on in the future, we always say that it's always the cheapest to build the cost of what you're gonna build now as opposed to adding on in the future. So you're gonna pay a little bit more just to add on. So I just wanna make that, because I know, you got some decisions to make, and those sorts of things may be important for you to know in making those decisions.
Excuse me, can you substantiate that first comment, though? Practically, how do you cut scope and pay more in overall
Yeah.
cost?
No, it's a real thing. It's because what you've cut out of the project, you may identify as low-hanging fruit or some smaller items, and you save, 5% of the job because you cut that scope out. But it takes you 6 months, 12 months to get that redesign figured out, get it repriced, and then by the time that 6 to 12 months is gone past, the prices of the marketplace have gone up so much that it's gone up more than 5% of what you cut out of the project, so you're paying more, but you have less of what you were originally gonna have in the building. That
We
makes
ran
sense.
into that on a few projects over the last 18 months, where it was, hey, we're not quite ready to pull the trigger, let's do some value engineering, and we spend 30 to 45 days going through this list and saving it, and bids expired within that time, so we're getting new numbers from those subs, and the prices went up. And, we haven't seen that it has stabilized some, but they're slowly still going up. I think it's more of a comment of, if we take another 6 months and we've cut a chunk, you might not see, some of the numbers you didn't touch will probably.
In more general terms, my question is, we have gone from, and I don't know the specific numbers, but generally speaking, we've gone from plus 200 bed facilities and cut that down because of overall cost to a little over 100, maybe 120 beds, and seen this number grow from 21 to 26 million. And so my question is, like, how do we request scope be cut down and yet still see these growing numbers in cost? And so when you make that comment, it just triggers me to ask, like, how is this playing out?
Yeah, it's a tricky balance, and honestly, there's not a great answer other than time is your best friend, so you wanna move as quickly as you possibly can. There are things like this on the list that we presented that are pretty easy things that we don't necessarily have to do to redesign the project. So we could go ahead and start to move forward if we knew we wanted to go and attack some of these things, where those are real-time savings, and you're not gonna see a marketplace change. But I think it's in the instances where we actually has to take a redesign, take a pause, step back, take 6 months or more, that's when you're really gonna see those things hurt you.
Is the 28 or 26 gauge down to 24, is that a significant difference in the steel?
No, the 26 or the 24 gauge is a common thickness that we see on exterior siding with metal buildings. Both interior and exterior is an option, it's pretty standard. That's not to, 26 and 28 are standard as well. So moving to that, you don't give up a lot, but you save some money. You don't have the pricing from a metal building manufacturer on that yet. Would you see it? No, I bet if you go around and survey metal buildings, there's probably the majority of them that are that. When you're designing a jail, you're designing a building you want it to last for the long haul, and so those kind of things are typically where you would spend a little bit more money just to give a far more durable, but you're not gonna get a much less of a product just because.
It's not gonna rust through it.
Question, how much of this 26 million, would end up being BW Construction's net, would you guesstimate?
In terms of profit,
Well, not necessarily profit, just overall, how much of the 26 million goes to BW, and then, I'm just curious.
so 2 line items, general conditions and staffing, and the construction manager, OH&P, those fees, those are the internal dollars for us to operate and do the project. The rest is all the costs that would go to somebody else, materials, subcontractors. said, these are preliminary costs, we're still looking at everything, so those items are not excluded from us looking at.
Well, when we was looking at the last jail, the last Jack's, I can't remember the name of it, he was like 4.8 or better. That was Mr. Blue's argument that, you know, he could drop that percentage, and we were at that percentage that he wanted then. I think if I read it right, it says, 3.85% on that one, construction manager.
Yeah, we've tried to be competitive with what we see in the marketplace.
What was Jack's number?
It was like 4.8.
So this is about 7.
Well, when last spring, we passed out the number, and I remember Bill, you saying when you got this, you're like, this is what I've been waiting for. I revamped that, brought it up to current figures. And I'll just start out at the beginning. We're still looking, and I've not talked to Baker Tilly to see, you know, the validity of doing a $10 million bond. I think that a year ago, it was not even a year ago, that was certainly sufficient. So let's just go with that. We're probably gonna do a $10 million bond issue. And obviously, this doesn't include any of the financing, any of the bond underwriting, any of the big utility costs. It does not include any of that. So we have to bear that in mind. The lit correctional facility, we are now, instead of 3 million, we are now up to like 3.8, almost 4. I'm calling it 4. The jail cap project is still at 1 million, so the combination of those two is fine. If we're still looking at the 3 groups that we had designed and looked at back last spring, ARPA at 1.5 million, rainy day at 1 million, and then the RBC contribution of about 1 million. That was 3.5. I don't know that that amount from ARPA will change. Hopefully, we might be able to get a little bit more. Rainy day, we did put in another $800,000 from the general ledger fund at the December meeting last week. And I would assume, I would hope that we'll be able to do that again next year. So I would think about 1.6 there. And the 3 years, I mean, we're probably talking between now and turning the key and walking in, 2.5, 3 years construction time.
We've 18 months construction,
Okay,
from the time we break ground, so.
okay, all right, so let's back that up to 2 years. And with the lift correctional facility, I think we're getting almost $85,000 a month from it. Last year, we figured 2 million for another 18 months or so during the construction period. That should put us up to about 3 million in new dollars coming in. So what I did, I added those figures up, and we got to 13 million plus the $10 million bond issue. So real extremely rough figures were about 23. That what I have with the updated figures and potential future figures were about at 23.
What were you considering the term on that bond?
Probably 30 years. Because I believe the conversation I had with, who was the guy at Baker Tilly? You remember? Matt. I think it was a 30-year, and with that, the correctional facility amount, the $84,700 each month, will more than pay by about I think 105% more than pay principal interest. Of course, we see interest go up, so it will probably cut into that extra that we would have to do that.
Is that the source that we would bond from, is the lead?
Yes, exactly, that would be our repayment schedule. Plus, we are now faced as a county with